Please subscribe the channel, press the like button and activate the notification. She said, "I want to learn magic." The magus gazed to her, in which she wore old jeans and an ordinary shirt, and in her eyes had that defiant of the shy faces, especially in the absence of any need to it. He thought, I must have been twice her age. But he realized, in spite of that he was in front of his soulmate. "My name is Brida, excuse me, because I did not introduce myself. I have waited a long time for this moment, and I am more nervous than you I imagine. Why do you want to learn magic?" "Because it may lead me to answers to some of my questions about the life, and how you possess magical energies, and so that I can also go back in time and raft in the future if that is possible." In this way, Paulo Coelho presented his heroic narration from the first line, and by his magical way he became all of us. We wanted to know what the answers Brida may reach. Breda's novel, one of the novels of the world author Paulo Coelho, was first published in Portuguese in 1990, and the Arabic edition was published in 2010. At the beginning of the novel, Paulo mentioned that Brida is a true story of a young woman whom he met with one of his journeys, but in the novel, he changed the events and names in order to preserve her privacy. And now, before I make my personal remarks, I will tell you the story in my own way. Breda is a girl Irish age 21, decided to learn magic and its secrets. This represents the first text of the novel. A moment presents her with a teacher nicknamed Magi. The novel begins with Brida trip in the jungle with the Magi, a trip she raises during a lot of questions. Brida's first goal was to convince the Magi to accept her as a student, and then after she success in that, the Magi started his lesson with Brida by explaining that the way of the wisdom, as it's called, has two paths, the sun wisdom and the moon wisdom, and he will be her teach for the sun wisdom. For that the Magi left her in the forest to underwent their first training. And after she spent the entire night in the forest alone, she faces raised a lot of questions and fears. She left the forest with happiness. In a later scene we see Brida spend her time a library in central Dublin, specializes in magic and the occult issues. She visited frequently by her to constantly browsing the magic books, and accidentally discovers a secret world of magicians, and with the help of the owner of the library who gave her a name and number of the main third character of the novel Wicca. After a period for quite some time, Brida with difficulty could set a meeting to interview Wicca at her home, and in the day of meeting Wicca raised a lot more questions, especially about the soul companion and about the other half and the importance of love. Brida discovered that Wicca represented the wisdom of the moon, which is a different way from that of the Magi. Brida was happy when Wicca accepted to become her teacher, where she gave her home-related exercise concerned with tarot paper, which represents her first step in this adventure. Brida spent and persistently practiced periods since according to Wicca these papers must reveal a vision which will set her the beginning of the path to the wisdom of the moon. Then the novel moved us to another side of Brida's life, where we realized that she was working as a secretary, and that she was in a relationship with Lawrence, who was also the assistant researcher of physics professor, and where he is not only respects the other side of Brida's life but also encourages her on it. Returning to the other side of Brida's life, that related to witchcraft, we discover that she faced a difficult time in her home exercise, which makes her think of asking the help of the Magi or from her own paper. Eventually the decision was taken to cancel the agreed time with Wicca, but when she contacted Wicca on phone, she helped her to end the exercise, when the tarot paper appealed her a visionary of another world, completely different work of the invisible, and thus she completed her first step. Brida started the second phase with Wicca by visiting the forest located just 15 miles from south of Dublin, and in the forest, Wicca helped Brida to begin a magical ritual aims to find the previous life of Breda, where Brida entered another world guided by Wicca on every step. It began by entering the cathedral, and after crossing the cathedral, Breda crossed a crypt contains volumes of books. Wicca asked her to choose a book. Brida chose a regular, non-distinctive one, and when she opened the book, she fainted, and then waked up on a voice calling her Lonnie. Brida now in her past life. She is now a lady. Her name is Lonnie, a mercenary's warrior's wife. Currently exists in Montsegur Castle while engaged in battle defending the Church of Canthurate against Catholics. Lonnie is injured and dying in the hand of her husband Tulbu. And we know now that Lonnie speaks to sounds, whom predicted her death, and despite Lonnie is in her last moments, she is not afraid, as she is in the hands of her soulmate, and now she can hear the voices of the universe, while seeing herself wearing the martyring in her finger. Lonnie was glad she can hear Tulbu breaths. She is after all a woman fallen in love. Brida waked up on Wicca's voice asking her a quick question. Tell me about your talent? After Wicca's insistence on the question, she answered, I used to be a woman fallen in love. Brida told Wicca about all the events she witnessed within the vision, but Wicca explained to her that she is not Mrs. Lonnie, but she owns a part of her memories. Brida and Wicca left the forest toward Wicca's house, and when they arrived, Brida's biggest question was if her experience was true, and if it was a real vision from the past, or just hallucinations in her mind. But Wicca offered her a book about a Cantharian and real images from Montsegur Castle. The Brida actually realized that it was the same place she existed in it as Lonnie. Finally, before she leaves, she asked Wicca about the reason that makes her accepting being her teacher. So, Wicca explained to her that she is one of those are in charge for maintaining the wisdom of the moon, and Brida is from the magician race, therefore, it's her duty to teach her. During the week that followed Brida's adventure in the forest, she focused on her work, her studies, meeting her friends, and tried to keep her mind busy rather to think in the Magi. But at the end of the week, she sat with Lawrence, and when he felt her anxiety, he asked her to be frank with him. Then she told him about all of the events that happened with her in full details. Lawrence was very understanding and talked to her in his own scientific way and explained to her that although he do not believe in all things she got through, but he is sure it's real for her, and encouraged her to continue despite her concerns, which made her feel psychological comfort. On that night, Brida saw a beautiful dream represents the memory of her childhood with her father, and I remembered that she personally suffers from defect, which is her failure in commitment in anything she chose in her life, which made her promise herself to continue till the end. 2 months later, Brida returned to meet the Magi in the forest, and talked to him about Wicca, and that despite her love to learn the moon wisdom from Wicca, but also, she is insisting to learn from him the sun wisdom too. Then she received her second lesson, the Magi, regarding the internal calmness and listening to nature and universe sounds, and perform a simple pay from the heart. After the sunset, the Magi invited her for tea at his home. Magi house is a very simple house, and while drinking the tea, Brida asked him several questions. The most important one is how to find her soulmate. The Magi tried to evade it from answering and said that everyone on earth trying to find this answer, and told her that according to sun wisdom put a sign a special luster in the eye. And the moon wisdom refers to the twin spirit halo of light over the left shoulder. When Brida left the home and the village, the Magi performed his daily rituals in the garden and remembered how he saw the glitter in Brida's eyes and the halo over her shoulder, but preferred not to inform her, hoping Brida will recognize him as her soulmate. During the next 2 months, Brida received a lot of training from Wicca, who explained to her that learning the wisdom of the moon is much easier for women rather men, and the training required from Brida to have a book with 5 stars signed to record all her training in, and to have also a 2-blade dagger crowned as Flam. And as Lawrence's method to show respect for Brida life, he gifted her the dagger, which was made by one of his friends. Then Wicca added some magical rituals using charcoal and wooden spoon. Wicca made it clear that, despite the simplicity of the tools, it was the first witches' way to conceal their truth when they were exposed to stalking in ancient times, wherever they couldn't use the original magic tools. And also, Wicca asked Brida to allocate a small corner of her house as a temple, containing a candle that should remain lit represent the four elements of the moon wisdom and to remind Brida of the headed goal to be achieved, and all tools must be hidden except the candle. In addition, she asked her to monitor the nature sounds carefully and to look for symbols left by ancient sages. Through all that, Brida learned how to burn incense and using the dagger within the magical circles. Brida training required that a monthly ritual performed in every time the moon phase changes using water and the dagger, and also, she has to study the tarot cards 3 times a week as a training used to peruse the present without anticipating the future. On weekly basis both Wicca and Brida visited the forest, so Wicca will ensure teaching Brida the secrets of the herbs, especially the medical ones, while she also taught Brida dancing and how to move her body in harmony with universe rhythm. Likewise, Wicca warned her that most of her experiences during the magic way will be unreasonable, but each step should be formed with faith. A while passed and Brida still committed to her exercise till Wicca called her to inform her about a witches' meeting in the forest, and when Brida arrived to the specific location, she met Wicca and number of 9 ladies in different ages. Then Wicca told her that as per the moon wisdom the world witches gather once a year in the 9th moon to honor the first witches who have been persecuted and murdered, and are honored is done through a prayer. Despite Brida continue her exercise as she learned from Wicca, but she still has many doubts and questions regarding the moon wisdom way, especially her constant desire to know about the soulmate. Even though Brida felt sometimes bored with repetition, but she committed to all exercise and eventually reaped the fruit of her hard work and could finally hear the sounds. And when she told Wicca about that, she told her that she is now eligible for the next stage according to the moon wisdom, which is the indoctrination phase, and the date was determined at the spring equinox. Brida kept on her contact with the Magi and also informed him about her ability to hear voices, and about her reaching the indoctrination stage. Also she invited him to attend the celebration. She told him that despite her reaching an advanced stage of the moon's wisdom, she's still insisting to learn the sun's wisdom from him. In exceptional communication outside the classes, Wicca invited Brida for a shopping trip. By the end of this trip, Brida realized that the purpose of it was Wicca's desire to teach her humility and to realize that learning the moon wisdom do not make a special human, because every person communicate with God, nature, and life in his own way, and every person has his own distinctive energy. With the proximity of the date of the indoctrination phase rituals and realization that the time for the Moji as her teacher is nearing completion, she visited the Moji and invited him to a bar to thank him for all the time he gave her unconditional assistance, and without his guidance she wouldn't have started this magical journey and would never learn anything about the sun wisdom. During Brida's preoccupation with her continued talk about her practice of magic and her dazzle of what I have learned, the novel took us into the crypts of Magi memory for his first days in learning, where in spite of his teacher advised to him to learn the sun wisdom, but he insisted to study the moon wisdom, and where he sparkled in moon wisdom and reached the stage of debutante teacher. But in his way, he felt in love with another debutante teacher, and despite their realization that they are not a soulmate but love was stronger. Then after a while the girl found another young man who she felt in love with him, even though he also wasn't her soulmate. She decided to separate from the Moji to be with him. The Moji get mad and rejected with all his strength their separation and her relation to the other man, and finally he transgressed the higher rule, which required not to interfere in free will of another human being, and by using magic he set away the other man who felt in love with his beloved lady, but even though that didn't prevent their separation. When his teacher learned of this, he imposed a punishment on him that he would spend his time alone, in the forest, and learn the sun wisdom. Because it will help him to curb his power and energy, but has promised him that the love pushed him to instructions infraction will also be the reason to set him free again when his soulmate eventually revealed. the Magi returned to reality on the voice of Brida, and when they left the bar, Brida had an ununderstood feeling makes her unable to leave the Magi. This feeling was like a strange power magnetize her, so she preferred to spend more time with the Magi when they started to walk around the village. But Brida at that time had questions about her feeling toward the Magi, but how it could be possible, and she already saw the eye sparkle in Lauren's eyes. Then at that moment she noticed the same sparkle in Magi eyes. Brida get confused of that fact, and sked the Magi to leave the village. They walked together till they reached a field of wheat, and under the moonlight Brida decided for mysterious reasons to perform her rituals. So she drew a magical circle while repeatedly says the holy names as she learned from Wicca. Then the Magi follow her inside the circle. When Brida started to evoke the forces of nature, and at that moment Magi felt the presence of his mentor and could sense his happiness with his student being learned from the mistakes of the past and leave Brida the freedom in her decision. When Brida ended the pray, the Magi started his own pray, and took Brida into journeys across time and space through both wisdom, where Brida felt the love in a completely different say, and could also saw the halo above the Magi left shoulder, where she realized the reason of her feeling toward him. By the end of the ritual they both came back to the wheat field, and Brida realized in an unquestionable fact that she is in front of her soulmate, and that creates mixed feelings in her which stayed with her even after she left the space. Breda visited her parents' home in the village days before the indoctrination rites date. She was looking for some psychological relief in her childhood home before the expected celebration. Despite the participation of her feelings with her mother, she remained confused about loving her to Lawrence and the Magi being her soulmate. Today is the promised day. Tonight Wicca will indoctrinate 3 new witches, the major secrets, and despite her preparation and arrangements, the ceremony venues being not her first celebration, but Wicca still feeling tension. At night Breda reached the place of ceremony in the forest with Lawrence, and there she was surprised by the number of attendees of almost 100 persons. Some are guests and some are participants. Wicca welcomed all of them and invited them to start the ceremony, and set fire in the middle where some of them started dancing around the fire, and despite Breda surprised by the nature of the celebration, but the presence of the Magi makes her feel happy. Then Lawrence introduced himself to the Magi and thanked him for helping Breda. At that moment Wicca realized that the Magi and Breda are soulmates, and she was very happy that this entered the peace to her friend's soul. Everyone merged in the celebration through singing and dancing on a regular rhythm and repeating Wicca words, which are magical words of holy witches, and gradually everyone stopped dancing. Remained only the wisdom teachers and the 3 new witches, whom kept constant dancing around the fire as a kind of rituals on a regular musical rhythm still made by the audience using different tools. Almost 1.5 hour passes of applause and dancing that Wicca ended as started to begin after that process of indoctrination. Breda and the other 2 witches are in a state of spiritual coma. Breda saw herself move through times and spaces and met during her journeys the wise ancient teachers, and especially Wicca's mentor, who awarded her more wisdom and blessed her acceptance as a witch in moon wisdom way. The rituals ended and Breda returned to reality. Everyone started to leave. Breda approached the Magi, when he surprised her with his words about him realizing the love she shares with Lawrence, and he blesses this love, and in spite of them being as soulmates but their destiny is not being together. Also he told her about the extent of pride he has being her teacher toward the sun's wisdom, and that her presence was the reason that allowed him to get rid of his unity prison, and finally he asked her not to ever forget him. Breda felt happy because she shared a special love with the Magi, a love that no one could rob it. Finally she thanks the Magi and left with Lawrence. Despite his words to Breda, the Magi felt sad, but at the same time another feeling of happiness outplayed him, as he felt that the indoctrination rituals was also for him, where he realized that he now has a new goal, which is the transfer of sun wisdom, and he became less lonely and happier after meeting his soulmate. This is how the novel ended. I wish I presented it in a way that is good for you, but allow me to present my personal opinion. We and through the novel lived with Breda her adventure to understand the magical world and the difficulties encountered her, and the discovery of her love for Lawrence's, and finding her soulmate, and that her love to the Magi is infinite even if choose someone else. Also we have learned new things about the visible and the invisible worlds, and her relationship with nature, life, God, and universe has changes. We have also witnessed the change of Lawrence from a working person who believes in logic only to a person who is receptive to others' concepts, and his realization that science does not conflict with faith. Also, we lived in adventure with Magi and see how his presence with Brida helped him get rid of the punishment imposed on him for his selfish behavior, and he how improved when he refused to be deprived Brida of her happiness with Lawrence, and ultimately gave them his blessing for their love. We realized how splendid Wicca as a teacher she is his savior to the moon wisdom doctrine. I also like to make other final remarks. The first is that it is a great novel, contains too many details. These details moved you to the spiritual and invisible worlds. I hope that everyone can read it so you will be part of the novel world in your own way. Ultimately you will realize that the novel motivates you to ask many questions about yourself first and life second. My second note is that the novel contains some sexual innuendo, but to be fair it was not mentioned in a cliché way, but it really was part of the story and complementary for its details. I wanted to draw your attention to this point because personally I considered this novel dedicated to people over 18 years. Thanks for your generous watching. If you like the video, please subscribe the channel, press the like button and activate the notification.